Okay, hello everyone, and welcome back to my 2-week challenge. Technically, I know that the challenge has, strictly speaking, been over for about 2 weeks, but I never got around to doing the pen video, so I'm doing it tonight. So I'm just going to be making one of these. I call them twisted spirals. Although spirals technically twist, but never mind. I'm going to be using the shred and stick veneer that I made on day 9 of the challenge, and I'll use something else as a contrast. So it would look something kind of similar to this, I guess. I'm going to be using a pen kit from Penn State Industries in the United States, and this is definitely one of my newfound favorites. The pen kits come with everything you need to make the pen of your choice. So in this case, it's got the brass tube, which is what we'll be focusing on tonight, is making this part of the pen. And then this one's got a fountain nib, some ink, or ink well, and the other accompaniments for this particular pen, including, oopsies, there it is, this very pretty lid. Okay, so I'm just going to put these aside for now because I really don't need them for this part of my pen making. The other thing that it's probably a good idea to invest in is the bushings. That each pen kit has unique bushings. Some of them sort of, cross over, but just make sure that you have the right bushings for your particular kit that you're using. And that's it. So to get started, I want to finish up this veneer here. Oh, you can see it's cracking. So I'm actually just gonna mute my mic just in case there's some extra background noise from my side, and if there's anything that you want to know or whatever, just pop it in the comments and I will answer them for you. Okay, so what I'm actually doing here is I'm just wanting to measure how much clay I need to wrap around this tube to cover it fully. So I'm just measuring that quickly. Another thing is the thickness of the clay around any given pen differs slightly, which is why you need the bushings. It's a guide to show you, well, to guide you to the right thickness. So if you were turning this out of wood or acrylic or something like that, you would use it to make sure that you don't you know, shave the material down past this. Excuse me. Whereas with clay, instead of you know, removing layers of material, we're actually adding, and so the bushings work just as well for us polymer clay artists as it would for just normal pen turners. Okay, so I know that this particular pen, the kit requires about a number 4 thickness on my pasta machine, and so that's what I rolled this clay out to. And these bushings just fit in the tube like this. And as you can see, there's no gap. This is a smooth transition between the clay and the bushing, and that's what you want really. You don't want this clay to be thicker than the bushing, because that's how thick the metal parts on the pen would be. If I can find it, we'll use this one. So these, to make sure that oopsies, you know, this is nicely finished here, that the clay part isn't too thick or too thin or whatever. That's what the bushings guide you. So for this pen, the bushings would obviously be a lot thinner, and it would show me, you know, how thick to make at least the ends. If you want to make sort of a bulbous, you know, body to it, you can do that as well, but where the clay and the bushing meets, that's where you need to be careful with your thickness. Okay, so I'm happy with that. Just gonna, I shouldn't actually have put this on so properly, but I got a bit carried away. Okay. So now I know that this is the right amount of clay, the right size, blah blah blah. It's obviously going to stretch a bit because that's the nature of clay when you handle it, but you can deal with that later. Smooth this out again. And now I like to, when I do these spiral pens, I did have that one as an example, but now it's I like to have 2 different parts to it. So sometimes I'll do, like in this one, 2 of the same, so both of these are the shred and stick method. Other times I like to have a solid color as the contrasting bit, or a bit of Makume Gan, or you know, whatever. I don't want the whole thing to be sort of the same always. So in this particular case, I'm going to make a little I guess a little veneer, and I'm going to be using this stencil and some alcohol ink. This is gold, and I've got pearl clay here. Okay, so I'm just going to stick this over the top, and I'm going to roll it out, and then I just need to get a little paintbrush or something similar. This will do, stay there. So I don't want the gold to be very overpowering, so I'm just going to add some isopropyl to my little dish here, and then just pop a few drops of the the clay in it. Ugh, not the clay, the concentrated ink. Just grab some paper towel, which is over here. If you've watched any of my videos, you'll know that I don't clean my things when I finish using them. I like to leave that for when I want to use it again.
Gotta love that radar.
Okay, no, so that's cool. Just what I'm doing here. I'm just removing, or trying to remove some of the ink.
Down infantry, mate, we are.
Okay, so I've actually used all of that now. So the metallic tends to settle. Sorry, Kyle's playing something, killing people. The metallic pigments in the metallic inks settles at the bottom, so you really want to give it a good shake and make sure that it's distributed evenly through whatever's left in the bottle. Okay. I'm just going to add a couple of drops. 5. That'll do. And now mix that through a little bit. I do have a paintbrush for that, which is missing in action, so I'll use this. And I'm actually just going to use this little sponge to just sort of dab it onto my clay. Maybe another one.
What's that?
So that was a waste of time because I have a clean one.
Yeah, it's driven up beside it, so hard to attack with.
So I've actually, the reason I rolled the stencil onto my clay is to make sure that there is very little gaps for the ink to get in. That is not strong enough at all. I don't want the gold to go underneath the stencil because that would defeat the purpose of the stencil, which is why I rolled it with my little acrylic roller. Add a bit more of this. I love using the sponges. I love the effect that it creates, but it absorbs so much of the ink or the paint or whatever it is you're using. It could be a problem. Okay. Just gonna let that dry for a bit. One of these cards. Stencil off. Oh yeah, that's pretty. I like that. Okay, so now I want to that's nice and straight. I'm just going to set this aside for the moment. So let's get rid of that. So I need a piece of this one that's the same size as this one, so I'm just going to get some water, spray the top of this. Water acts as a barrier so that the clay doesn't stick to one another, which would be a bit of a disaster in this case. So lay this on top. Now I'm not actually putting any pressure on the white and gold one because I really don't want these two sheets of clay to stick together. Separating them. Okay. And then to create that spiral effect, I will cut this diagonally. So I'm not actually going to remove them from one another because I want the diagonal to be almost exactly, well, as close to exactly as possible. So if I do that, oh damn, I forgot. And then I just need to cut another one this way.
I had to drive all the way back to the tech centre to get ammo from a ant.
And this one here. Perfect.
Had to drive all the way back to the tech centre to get ammo for my ant. Yeah, I know, but I'm using something else.
Yeah, I didn't think this through very well. It's going to be a problem. It's alright, we'll make it work. Okay. So, now I've got these lovely long strips. I'm actually going to rebuild my little squares. Like so. Okay, so now this can go, I need to get rid of the water. This can go around the pen, the little brass tube, and in theory it should wrap around nicely and we'll get a lovely twisty spirally effect. Okay, so pick this up, pick some of it up. And I'm just going to carefully wrap this around my brass tube. The PSI tubes come pre-scored, so you can see it's not a very smooth tube. If it isn't, I like to just scratch the surface of the brass. This was too big. Just to give the clay something a little bit extra to hold on to. It's not strictly speaking necessary, but it does help make sure that the clay doesn't go anywhere when you don't want it to go anywhere. Okay, so I've got a tiny little bit of overlap here, so I'm just going to remove the gold from the bottom. Straighten up this edge here. Make sure that it's a nice and clean edge so that we can hide the join if we wanted to. Okay, then I need to make sure this fits in here. Okay, if you measure the squares properly, then you don't have this problem, but I didn't do that. And this goes around to there. Perfect. And this little bit will fit in here, theoretically.
I think it's clear. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's clear.
Okay, so I've actually got some excess clay here, so I'm just going to try and get my blade as flat as possible on the top of the tube, so that I can cut away the excess clay without cutting too much. So this is just a different tube. I'm going to try and get my blade flush with the top and then just slowly sort of cut away the excess clay over the top of this. So now I'm just going to try and smooth out this joint so that it's less noticeable. Okay, time for my bushings to make sure that everything is where it's supposed to be. Okay, I'm just going to roll this out. Make sure that everything is stuck where it's supposed to. I'm really happy with that, actually. Okay, so I can still see because this here was cut and there's no clean lines on any of the other parts of this. So what I'll actually do is I'll just grab some of these little pieces that have the jaggedy edges, and I really just want teeny tiny pieces. I don't want to add too much extra clay on here, and I'll just try and disguise some of those little shreddy bits. So I try and find sort of pieces that the colors match up, but of course you don't have to do this. If you're happy with it just the way it is, then rather leave it than risk creating problems. So I've just added 3 or 4 little pieces just over here. So I'll just roll that out again. So using this technique on a pen that has 2 parts, like this, as you can see I have a second one here, you only need to make this veneer once, and then you'll have the exact same one for both parts of the pen. But for this one, obviously I can make the pen twice if I wanted to, but I'll most likely end up using this as something else. Okay, so there's that done. My clay is flush with the bushing, so there's no lip, there's no gap, there's no excess clay hanging over the bushing. You know, it's flush, it's beautiful, it's perfect. The last thing that I'll do now is I'll actually just define these joins here, which again, it's not a necessary step, it's just something that I like to do. So you can see there's a little white line in between these. It just looks better to me. It's really a personal choice. And that's all there is. I'm actually going to put this in the oven as it is. I'll stand it up in my oven like that with the bushings attached. And when it comes out, I'll sand it and seal it and put my pen together. I might do a video on that, you know, in the next couple of days or so, if I get around to it, or if not, I have a lot of finished tubes that are just, you know, lying around waiting to grow up into pens, so it might never happen. Alright, so that's it for this demonstration. If you want to stick around, I'll end this video here, but I will do another broadcast with just music, and I'll probably play with these veneers a little bit more for the rest of the night. So thanks for watching, and hopefully I will see you again next time. Bye.